Hello everyone, and welcome to A2i Dyslexia live show. I want to give you a very warm welcome. Today it's a lovely day. It's absolutely beautiful day today in the UK. I can use that word. We're based in sunny London, and it's been absolutely beautiful day. I hope you have had a fantastic day, and I hope you're ready to join the show today. We have the lovely Raheem, who will be joining us from, I think Raheem's based in North London. And I always make this mistake, don't I? Every week is the same. The only reason is that my memory, I've got very short-term memory, so sometimes I just forget things if I don't write them down. But I know Kareem is based in London somewhere. If not, he'll correct me once he's live. And I want to welcome the lovely Raheem. Sorry, I said Kareem. I meant Raheem. The lovely Raheem Luqmaan, who will be talking to us about dyslexia and identity today. Now, no matter where you're joining us from, I just want to welcome you. Thank you for watching. Join us by sharing, by commenting, obviously sharing your comments with us, and anything we can learn from yourselves as well. Do invite friends to come and watch the show with us. I hope your cup of tea, cup of coffee, your bottle of water is ready for you to join us. Welcome to A2i Dyslexia live show, all things dyslexia. Today's show is titled Dyslexia and Identity. I'd love to welcome the awesome Raheem. Raheem, welcome to A2i Dyslexia live show.
Evening, Izzy. How are you doing?
I'm very
How are
good,
you doing
thank you.
today?
How are you?
We're
all
back
right?
again. Yes. I'm very well. Like you said, it's I wish I could say it's sunny now. It's the sunset at the moment. But yes, in North London, and you didn't butcher my name. You just got it. So Raheem Luqmaan, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. But happy to be back and have a conversation again.
Wonderful. And you know what? It's been quite some time actually since we spoke, as in coming on live show. When I looked back, it was the 15th of June. And I remember saying, when we didn't finish the show, I remember saying, oh, maybe we will reschedule this like for part 2 and do another show. And it suddenly dawned on me that June's just gone. Well, June's gone some time ago. It's actually gone very quick. We're now in September, mid-September, so to speak. And it has been a beautiful day today. I'm sure you would agree with me. Welcome to our show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again. Just looking forward to just have a conversation, talk a little about my personal experience. If it could help anybody on just sharing a perspective, really happy to do so. And yeah, let's chat. Let's get into it. I'm really happy to talk about this topic.
After when the show we did with you live on the 15th of June, we had a lot of emails, a lot of comments where people were like, goodness me, I couldn't get enough of that. It was really powerful. The information you shared with us, it was just, we really needed to hear it. And I think a part 2 was definitely long due. And today is going to be even more phenomenal. I've used the word again.
Indeed.
Phenomenal. Don't ask me to spell it.
But phenomenal's a good word to use. Let's do this phenomenal work. Right. By all means. No, I think this is just what it's about, isn't it? It's really about increasing the visibility and increasing the conversation. And not everybody's going to have the same experiences and perspective, and that's actually okay as well, because we're building that kind of tapestry of experience to say that, look, foundationally, we're fine. But we need to also, show and say, well, look, I see the difference in you, and that's okay as well. And that's how we actually learn and benefit from each other. So yeah, let's get into it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Raheem. I think I must have called you Kareem, but I meant Raheem. Yeah? So please do pardon me for that.
Kareem's a good name as well.
Oh, bless you. So, Raheem, just tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your background. And of course, you've got dyslexia, dyspraxia, and learning, but just sort of give them a little bit of an update of who you are and what you're about and the plans for the future, because you were sharing some amazing stuff with me when we were sort of behind camera, and it'd be great to hear that. So the floor's all yours. Yeah.
All right. Really quickly. So my name is Raheem Luqmaan Khepera. I'll say raised, I was just about to say born, but really raised predominantly in Tottenham, North London. A lot of my involvement has been really engaging with community and youth. And, there's this kind of particular term I think you have certain public bodies and other institutions like to talk about the disaffected youth. Whilst for me, it's really just the community and people that we know and oftentimes have grown up with and oftentimes have interactions with. So a lot of my work has really been supporting community enterprises, people involved in Haringey, other organizations. And last year, due to my work, I was awarded an MBE for that. Still currently have some involvement in community engagement, but a lot of my work has now been taken up with my organization called Prime Unlimited, which really focuses on what I look at foundational elements within our community, which are small business and social enterprise, and really try and give them assisted information, not even technology, techniques and strategy to really buttress and support their enterprises there. And what we were talking about, and it kind of connected to this topic, is I'm a person who's quite hands-on, so I just would have a whim and want to start stuff. So one of the things that I just recently started in the last few days was an Instagram page called Daily African History. Check it out, like yeah, cheap plug there. But really the kind of concept behind that, and going into Black History Month in October, but it's generally this aspect of when we look on the internet, or when we look in our books or in our curriculums, there's so much information in terms of other people's history, and many organizations have been doing fantastic work in the field to bring our history and our foundation and worldview to prominence, such as on Black history studies, such as the Black curriculum, etc. There's so many organizations who are doing fantastic work. I just wanted to add a little contribution. I thought we have so much depth of history and world experience. Why don't we actually shout about and have a note each day to remind us of something that happened that was relevant to African diasporic history around the world on each day, so you'd know that, okay, on the 6th of September this happened, and just share that. And that has been a growing work, even though it's the last few days, but I could already see potential for that expanding because we have so much to share. And I think that really links into what we're talking about in terms of just I suppose my own foundations and aspects of intersectionality, and how important I think my identity and how I viewed myself was to how I experienced dyslexia.
Right. Thank you very much for that. So viewers, if you've just joined us now, today's show is titled Dyslexia and Identity. It is a part 2. We did part 1 in June, and we had so much response, a lot of comments. A lot of people really did identify. And today is about dyslexia and identity. And we're speaking to Raheem about his experience growing up with dyslexia, and obviously the challenges he's had and the successes he's had being a Black dyslexic and male as well. So that's what today's show is about. And if you just join us, please do share, please do comment. That's what it's about. We love to involve our viewers in this conversation, because without viewers, there is no show, as you know, Kareem. So I just want our viewers to really engage with us. No matter what the question is, do ask, because somebody else maybe really want to ask that question, but yeah, no question is silly, really. So do go ahead and ask. But we're going to dive straight into the show. And my first question I've got for Raheem is, in terms of identity and dyslexia, how do you view yourself as a Black male? How do you view yourself?
So that's really interesting, right? I think, and we shared part of this in part 1, but for those who weren't able to be, on the show, I wasn't diagnosed until quite late. So I didn't have a diagnosis when I was, I'll say, a child. I had my diagnosis when I was completing my master's at uni. And the way how dyslexia really manifested was in the case of a lot of frustration, a lot of living in the unknown, a lot of issues with my own kind of self-esteem, and not really understanding why it is that I behaved in certain ways. It also impacted, I think, the way I just engaged and communicated with my peers. A lot of time that I felt that I wasn't able to communicate in a way that I could necessarily be understood, and oftentimes I felt as an outsider. At the same time, it's quite interesting because before the diagnosis, a lot of my strategies for dealing with my difficulties and challenges were rooted in terms of the fact that I'm deemed black. So it's a case of, I know I'm gonna have to be at work 10 times as hard and get like a result that's, excellent for me to be given an equal chance. Coming from a Caribbean household, it was, drummed into me that, we are overcomers, and we are victors, and our foundation is not on the negatives that often kind of placed on our own image in society, but is really down to what we decide to do and actualize in this world. Living in Tottenham, it was again another factor, because outside of Tottenham, at the time when I lived, you always had the perception of, being in Tottenham, you are going to be a certain kind of person, and some opportunities weren't necessarily afforded to me just because of that status. At the same time, being from Tottenham is the solid thing that has made me the person I am today, because again, we're a community that has always fought for the side, of justice. And I grew up at the time where, I might during the time of the Broadwater Farm riots as well, and all the injustices throughout up until today. And I think the identity of being, part of the African diaspora, coming from a Caribbean heritage, and having dyslexia meant that, well, I had to find solution on one way or the other.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you for that for that answer. So, do you still live in Tottenham? I guess you born and bred in Tottenham,
I live near.
and you're
I still
still
live
in
in.
Tottenham.
I still live in Haringey, so I still
Haringey,
live in
yeah.
Haringey. Not trying to give out my home address or
No, of
anything,
course not.
but
Of course
yeah, no, I still live.
not. No,
Everyone
of
just
course
can't
not.
come down.
No.
But
Mm,
no, I still live in
mm.
Haringey. And I
That's
still
wonderful.
actually I still do a lot of work in Haringey as well. So
Mhm, mhm.
Haringey has been an area. It's quite interesting. When I first went to university, before I even started university, you have like an induction class where you've got about 100 to 200 people in an auditorium, and you have these like meet and greet exercises. And I remember I was paired up with a young lady who was from I believe it was Leytonstone, and we were exchanging because I think we knew the same people. And then she volunteered to be the first person to stand up and say, okay, well, introduce myself. So my first university experience was, okay, this lady got up and said, okay, this is Raheem, he's from Tottenham. And the first thing that a university lecturer said to me was, oh, I pity you.
Oh,
Now,
mm,
yeah, so that was something that I didn't expect, but at the same time it didn't surprise me, because
mm,
again, dealing with levels of stigma, and I think dealing with levels of trauma, that was a vernacular that I don't think was necessarily used then, but dealing with that kind of racism and institutional barrier was something that unfortunately was commonplace, and is something that still happens today. So yeah, I mentioned that only to kind of just put the point in that it was something that it was something that was totally shocking and totally kind of threw me. And there was a period of time that I even just didn't, with all the again other associated difficulties with dyslexia, there was a point where I hardly even wanted to go to university. But again, for the perseverance and resilience, I made it through, because again, it's that understanding that when I'm moving forward, and when persons in my family have moved forward before me, it wasn't necessarily for my own benefit by itself. And
mm.
we could have a conversation about why do we do things, and part of the reason I do things is because of legacy as well.
Absolutely. So, of course, being black, from
Mm,
the example you just given us, to also having dyslexia and all these other conditions on top of that, how
mm.
did it make you feel as a young black man? Did
So
you felt like
yeah.
you had to battle with being a black man first and then deal with the
Mm.
conditions after? Or it's because it's double whammy, isn't it? You're dealing with two
Well,
things at the
this is
same time.
yeah, this is a thing, and I want to give a shout out to someone I know we both know, Tumi Sotiri from the
Mm,
Black Dyspraxic, because
mm,
we've had a recent conversation, and he was just mentioning this term that I think we need to use more often, which is to do with neurodiversity.
mm,
And the reason why I just mentioned that is because not just neurodiversity, but also intersectionality with that. And I mention that because I didn't see myself as segmented in terms of, okay, well, I have this dyslexic half and I have this black half and then I'm male. I was just myself, right? So when I finally did get the diagnosis, and sorry, the assessment when I was completing my master's, it was freeing for me because it made me understand myself a lot more. It wasn't a case that I felt that, okay, well, I've got all of these problems and then these are all of the challenges and this is how other people are going to see me. I think first and foremost is really about one's own self-esteem. For me, having the assessment was something that was more freeing for me because it meant that, okay, I could form a solution or at least get help or find some kind of strategy or work around some of the difficulties I was having. I had to accept that, for example, even up to today, I'm not able to draw circles up until today. My writing is probably not the best, it's not going to win any awards. And up until today, every time I look at an Excel spreadsheet, even though I use it, it just reminds me of bars from prison. It's totally, someone who probably is not a dyslexic might not understand that reference,
Yeah.
but literally my brain zones in on those bars and it feels as if those bars have like holographically come out and I'm caged by them. That's how I feel by using Excel. But I think no, but in all honesty, it was that kind of intersectionality between them. It was just about me being the best me that I could be. And so it was an acceptance that there's going to be people who are going to not like me, not understand me, not have whatever. But that's also life as well. And this is again coming back from my identity, my life experiences. That's also a part of life where people on to first time or the second time or the third time. But then am I going to kind of, am I going to go through the course if that's something that I say I really want and I believe in? So yeah.
Right. Wow. And of course, you finished your degree and you did your master's, and nothing was going to stop you regardless. And I think you are a typical example of what I would say a successful Black male dyslexic, because, and all the other conditions that go with it, because you're dealing with one situation and you've got all those other conditions on top of it. And you successfully did that. And I'm not saying that would have been easy. If I say that, I'm lying to you. But I know what it must be like for a Black male to even come to terms with having this condition. I was having a conversation earlier with someone who contacted me today and said that he felt that a lot of Black men find it really hard to go for help.
Yeah.
And he was saying, if you've got a condition on top of that, i.e. dyslexia, it's even worse, and he was trying to find a way. So, well, how do we move forward with this? And of course, I said to him, look, if you can today, join in the live show that we will be sharing today. You might get some tips from that, because we've got somebody who is a typical example of the query that he was asking about. And why do you think that is then, Raheem? Why do you think that Black men perhaps doesn't, I can't generalize everybody, but some Black male find it difficult to access help, i.e. dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, whatever it might be, mental health, for example? Why do you think that is?
This is such I think this is even a wider conversation, but it does cross over, I think, aspects for me when it comes to, you have a society whereby that even your presence oftentimes, and I'll say in my experience, has been interpreted as a threat. Okay. And I'm, what I really mean by that is that racism and kind of other structural prejudices aren't always your explicit, okay, there's going to be, for example, like a neo-fascist with a mob coming down the road. No, that is oftentimes the most kind of pernicious kind of violence. The most, I think, pernicious violence is the one that's polite, the one whereby someone gives you a reason for why they can't accept you, and then you're not able to challenge that. So you're left without any kind of recourse for any social justice or any kind of equity, right? And oftentimes, you know, the interpretation even of sometimes certain conversations we have, you know, or you're too aggressive, or you're too this, or but the general conversation is that you are not supposed to be the person who you are, or your expression of yourself is viewed in the most negative way. And you know, the flip side of that, I think, is really the fact that, you know, no man wants to be perceived as weak. Like,
Absolutely.
there's
Absolutely.
none, right? So none I know, right? So in terms of when you're having, I think, conversations about assistance, and then it's contextualized in the sense of, oh, you need help, oh, there's something wrong with you, oh, you can't do something. You know, nobody's going to necessarily volunteer that, because in a society where I'm trying to hold on the most kind of masculine, most kind of sturdy image of myself, which gets fitted away at every kind of image I see myself and various kind of challenges, why then am I going to volunteer myself to then a further kind of deprecation of my own self-esteem? You know, I prefer
Right.
to either not acknowledge it, or do something else, or just say I'm not interested, or it's just not my thing. I prefer to then in my own way find some kind of route around that kind of negative reflection of myself. But then I think I did say it's a wider conversation, just to
Yeah.
add,
Yeah.
because I
Of
think that
course.
really quickly, there's something that happened in this country when many of our forebears came over, like in the 60s and the 70s, where many of our even persons our age group, and even, you know, our mother's age group, when they went to school, they were often kind of misinterpreted by the school system. And what I mean by that is that, you know, many of us have various different kind of cultural norms, and in the 60s and 70s, the level of cultural competencies, whilst it's not necessarily as high as we'd wish it today, it definitely wasn't on par in the 60s and 70s, right? So there are various kind of practices, like if you've got an older person in front of you, you know, some people culturally might avert their attention in terms of deference for respect. You know, I'm not going to necessarily look into an elder's eyes if they're speaking to me, or they're how children were put into institutions for the educationally subnormal.
Right.
So there's a piece of work that's done by Bernard Conrad, really examining this, and it was a piece of work. I hope I don't butcher the title, but I believe it was um how the West Indian child is made educationally subnormal by the British public school system. I believe that's the title, where it was just examining
Yeah.
the fact that we have had so many brilliant children, and then all of a sudden they were placed into, you know, certain educational settings because they thought that these children couldn't learn. Now, again, the reason why I'm just putting that as a backdrop is because many of our parents have that in their head. So when you're looking at even things like the supplementary school systems that really exploded in the 70s and 80s, that was a defense mechanism to ensure that many of our children were given, one, not only the education that they need, but they were buttressed in their own cultural paradigm, so that they weren't judged to be disaffected in a certain way. So when sometimes we have conversations about the why isn't always as acute as someone maybe not necessarily wanting to get help. It might be also because there's an understanding that unfortunately there's been a history in this country where we have been also misunderstood and mislabeled, and people don't necessarily want to kind of, you know, acquiesce to that as well.
Right. Oh, thank you so much for that answer, Raheem. Do you know what? I could just listen to you all day. Every time I have you on this show, there's something about having you on a live show, Raheem,
Oh,
and it's so educational and it's so empowering. And you know, I think there's two messages come up. Emmanuel Joseph, who dropped a comment earlier saying he's learned something new today. Learning something new again, he said. And of course, we've got Patty, who said we need to create safe spaces where our men feel seen and heard as individuals. And I 100% agree with that. And as I'm reading that, actually, Raheem, I've just got goose pimples all over me, because it's like there's so much that needs to be done. And that's why it's so great to have a representation like yourself. Can never say that word, bit of a mouthful. Like, you know, black male talking about this condition openly and say, look, it's okay, you know, but not everybody can do it the way you do it. And I just think it's so fabulous. Honestly, it's amazing to just keep listening to you, and our young people can have a role model to look up to. You know, said, look, if Raheem can do this, so can I do this. And I think it's just such a great platform to have you come on the show again and educating all of us about you know, dyslexia and identity, particularly from a black male's perspective. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I mean, I'm really humbled for you saying that. Thank you, and just thank you for, you know, the commentators you know, for their additions as well. I mean, it's more the sense of this. I was being, you know, brought up in Tottenham. I was around people who were successful, you know, and the levels of success that I saw around me weren't necessarily, even though you had some people, who were monetarily successful, but it's more about, you know, how, you know, people just live their lives, you know, and I wouldn't be the person I am today without Tottenham. I wouldn't, because, you know, as much as, you know, you have that reputation, and I've had some rough times as well, but at the same time, there's also kind of understanding of, you know, this is who we are, you know, and there's some.
I think it was, sorry, good. Sorry, I just interrupted you there.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, just to end, I was just gonna say that, you know, there's something to be said, regardless of anything. That I always say the foundation is really about, you know, the self-esteem and also cultural esteem that you have. You know, self-esteem, yes, one for self, but also the growing esteem for your community. You know, and knowing that I came from, you know, an area whereby we were all doing what we needed to do in our own different way. That was also great support as well.
Yeah, I think what's really great is having, you know, someone come on our live show to talk about his condition of dyslexia and all the challenges he's had, where I can resonate. And I'm sure millions of people can resonate with you. And that it isn't a Richard Branson or a Jamie Oliver or, you know, all these people that there is no representation. And yes, they've got dyslexia. I do agree with that. But I'm sort of looking at you thinking, actually, I can understand where Raheem is coming from. And it makes so much sense, you know, for any other, you know, BME or BAME, anybody who's watching at the moment, but particularly from the black community, our story is different. You and I know that. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Our story is completely different.
No
and
worries.
I always say this. Because it is, you know, from the black culture, it's completely different. And that's something that I just thought I have to echo on that. I'm going to move on to a really interesting question now. So do you agree with the saying that dyslexics are out of the box thinkers? If so, please give me a personal experience of what you think that is.
Oh God, how many experiences? So just one. Okay. So I do a lot of, I do a lot of project planning, and you know, that's a process where, again, Excel, you know, you have your various different things like Gantt charts and other things to kind of assist you and stuff, and I use them. But if I really want to get to the meat of me actually understanding something, I think I may have said this last time, I actually have a chemistry model. So I would actually build a program using a chemistry model, because I actually need to feel it. I need to be able to engage with it. I need to tactily kind of see what it looks like, not just it being on a screen. So I kind of play around with like models all the time, Legos, scribbles and things like that. So yeah, so I think that's one example.
Wonderful. And I think, you know what, having you on this show today, I think we're speaking more to our young black boys, you know, our young black boys that are growing up, who may have this condition, who really needs that help, who really needs someone to talk to, who's saying to the teacher, Miss, I can't do this because I just don't even know why I can't do it. I just can't do it. And where Mrs. saying, well, actually try harder. You and I know, Raheem, it's not about trying harder, is it?
No, no,
Dyslexia is real,
it's not.
and it is what it is.
Yeah, it's not about trying harder, and then it's not about being typecast as well at school. You know, I was the kind of person who didn't really study in class, but I studied at home. So for me, class was a case of, yeah, for me to kind of joke around, have fun, talk in class. Now I kind of realized that, okay, for me to kind of do that, I need to get A grades. So I made sure I got my A grades, right? But even then, it's easy to get typecast in school, whereby you've got teachers sometimes who, to the best of their efforts, aren't communicating in a style that necessarily engages you. So part of that thing is, I think, we speak about young people, but I have to also bring in the parents here as well, is that if you do have a child that is expressing a certain experience they're having at school, listen to your child. And this is not to take away anything from teachers who are doing fantastic work as well, but we also know that on Parents' Day or Parents Teachers Evening, that's kind of like the show day, right? Where you clean up the room, you make sure everything's kind of settled, you make sure you have your exercise books and things like that, depending if you're talking about primary school, etc. But in any case, it's really about not waiting until there's a particular problem, or the problem is so manifest that, okay, we're looking at kind of final stages here, where it's really about, I think, as if children are presenting to you and saying, okay, well, they have a difficulty, it's about building that relationship not only with that teacher but also with the school, to say, okay, well, what is actually being done, or what, how my child's expressed this, how have you supported him, what other ways can we think about, how can I support him at home and you support him at school. It's about having that dialogue, so that it's not that whole case of, okay, the child said something, the teacher disagrees, and is this kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
No, and that often happens as well.
Do you know what, Raheem? With me struggling from school, from primary to secondary to like college stage, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It was one of the most terrible times of my life. Everyone's going one direction, I was going the opposite direction. And to the extent that it's had a huge impact on me, even as a grown woman now. And I don't know when I would be able to move away from that. And I wouldn't wish any child to go through this. So I just want to echo what you're saying. Parents, if you are watching, and if there is, you've got a child who's struggling, or you feel something may not be right, please go for the help you need. Because if we leave it for any longer, not all of us can actually manage and cope like Raheem and I have done, and many other guests we've had. Some children may not be able to sort of, catch up with the learning, and it can have so many different impacts in their life. And I think where it really worries me is the mental health that comes with not getting the help you need with dyslexia. Yeah, you must have experienced a little bit of that, didn't you, Raheem? How was it for you? You went through anxiety and depression.
And still deal with anxiety. If I'd be totally honest, I still deal with anxiety. So I had I'll say a crisis, I think, a few years ago, whereby it was a case of being depressed and not even knowing that you're depressed, is a terrible thing. And when I actually had counseling, because I need to have counseling.
Absolutely.
It was a conversation about.
Let me stop you there, Raheem. Counseling, very, very important. And I just want to say that I think we've got somebody who's watching at the moment who's a psychologist, and her message just came up and said, look, early intervention is the best thing. It's Dr. Heather Brobe. Don't stay silent. Please don't stay silent. I just had, when you mentioned the way counseling, I thought, yes, definitely. Get that help you need. I'm a living testimony of that. Because if you don't, you could end up going the other way. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And I suppose, so this is the aspect of, okay, well, what can happen for all the positive things I've said? So everything's a balance. What could happen if you don't get counseling and you don't have the support that you truly need? And I had a period where for 3 months I was actually off work. I could not engage with that kind of environment. And simply it was just because so many things had just built up over the years. And there was a period of time when, you know, when I did have counseling, it was a conversation about me being chronically depressed
Mm-hmm.
and examining the reasons for that and why. And I think the reason why I kind of mention this as well is because the things that were described, I would have never thought that was actually depression. I would have just thought that, oh, that's just how I am, or that's just how I feel. And so I think there's the real essential thing about being getting the support you can when you're younger, because when you do have, you know, some mental health challenges such as I did at the time, I didn't even have the words to communicate how I felt. You know, I couldn't even form the kind of context in terms of what it was, because it had been happening for so long. And it was really at that point where I really then started to examine, like, okay, well, these are the reasons why I was feeling. And a lot of the, I think, issues that I had, like, overall, were really to do with issues about, you know, rejection and not acceptance, and that was related to my dyslexia as well. We I know you briefly asked me about what the experience was when I spoke about, to my parents, about me being dyslexic, and even today, you know, my mother doesn't accept that I'm dyslexic at all. And the conversations that we have had around dyslexia have been, I think, from her perspective, of being from a protective stance, bringing the context I was telling you about in terms of her lived experience, in terms of what it meant to be dyslexia and what was happening in the 60s, 70s. So her most comments were, well, why would I ever want to harm myself and call myself that way? But then it's that kind of understanding that, well, one, not everybody's going to understand you, and not
Of
everyone's
course.
necessarily going to accept you. But ultimately, the most important thing is that you're able to kind of accept what you need and what your challenges are for yourself, because you're the person who's, you know, going to be, you know, going to bed and having whatever thoughts you're having in your head. No one's necessarily going to be seeing your thoughts, even though you might be presenting in the world in a certain way. So the most important thing is really to have that kind of clarity, so that you could get that support from an early age.
Wonderful.
And but wrap that context in a self-esteem conversation as well, not just, oh, you have this. No, we
Of
all
course, of course.
have different minds because we're all neurodiverse.
Absolutely. And I always love to engage with our viewers. A couple of comments have come through. I think
Mm.
it's Dr. Brobe again. She dropped a message there. I think she mentioned something like counseling and having the right community around you is so
Mhm,
important. Totally
mhm.
agree. There's another, yes, many of us have been taught to define our dysfunction. I can't say that word. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yes. Say it for me.
Dysfunctionality.
That's the
Or
one. Yeah.
dysfunction. No, dysfunction as
Dysfunction as
personality.
personality.
Two
Okay.
dyslexics trying to read a sentence live.
Two dyslexics
So,
trying to read a sentence. Great stuff. We got there in the end. Yes.
yeah.
And I totally agree. I totally agree with Dr. Brobe.
I do.
Honestly,
Yeah.
honestly. And Pat, who said, did you get sent out of class? Did you get sent out of
Oh
classes,
man.
Raheem?
Well, this is the thing, right? So yes, I did, and but the thing about it is that I did most of my secondary schooling in the Caribbean, in Saint Vincent, right?
Uh-huh.
So in those days they still had the cane, so, and you still had the dean who how to say, he was the one who, let's say, communicated justice. Let me leave it that way, right? So I made sure that before I'm gonna get sent out and the dean could actually see me, no, I'm gonna try and talk my way, negotiate my way, say what I need to say so that the dean doesn't see me as he does his rounds, because there was no way I was gonna get caned. And thankfully, for all my secondary school life, I did not experience that. But I have been, yeah, I've been sent out. I've had to do in the Caribbean, sometimes when you're sent out, you have to like clean what you call the school louvers and stuff.
Yeah.
I've been on
Yeah.
cleaning duty. I've all sorts. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Patty,
Well,
thank you
just
for
to
the
say
question.
that growing up in Ghana, I was pained and I did all the duties,
Yeah.
cleaning the windows and sweeping the whole compound and
Hmm.
doing all that whilst everybody else was learning. But that's because of my dyslexia and other conditions. I
Yeah.
couldn't perform in a class. But you know what? I'm the best cleaner you could ever get. My house is top notch. I clean from top to toe.
There you go.
You know, so
There
as
you go.
much as they got me doing that, in a way, I learned a skill. how to do it properly.
There you go.
And that was
Exactly.
some of the punishment back in Africa, to be honest with you. Thank you so much
Hmm.
for that, Raheem. A couple of messages have come through again. I think they come from Heather. And if our studio manager can pop that up, if not, I'll just move to the next question. So, what is the promise for dyslexic people? What does the future hold for us?
So this is my favorite part, and I'm going to be brief. But I always say when it comes to dyslexics, like the world is ours. Like the world is ours, literally. And people are surprised by why I would say that. And it all goes back to how do we define like the skills of a dyslexic? Are you seeing somebody just as, oh, you're not able to read sentences or plan properly or do a myriad of other things? But yeah, I'm genuinely a great communicator. I understand and read people fairly well. So in terms of competencies, culturally, emotionally, or otherwise, yeah, I'm kind of good at that. I love big picture thinking. I oftentimes can see the connection between various different things and like form a pattern. I love taking leadership and clearly talking, right? So the world now, and I try not to overuse this, but it's that kind of famous quote where you're looking at like an educational system, and oftentimes we have a 21st century children taught by 20th century teachers on a 19th century based curriculum using 18th century strategies because the school system was really creative to assist our economy and the factory line at the time at the Industrial Revolution. And we, as in terms of our society, has moved on so much, and school is an amazing place. And again, I'm not anti-curriculum, but I do understand sometimes the limits of teachers, curriculum, and so many things that you have within oftentimes a public school setting. And we, oftentimes people say, okay, now we're in the information age. And the honest thing is, no, we're not, because information is cheap. I could go on YouTube and find out how to do that. I don't actually need to set a course. I could probably look and find it somewhere because information is so freely available. The question is, okay, so what do we do with it? And dyslexics are really, really good at, as I said before, kind of like pattern recognition. So things like data analysis, data scientists, dyslexics are excellent at that. You've even got one of the government departments, I think is GCHQ. They're and I think also like MI6, MI5, they're looking for people who are what you call like pattern recognizers or face recognizers, because in such a like urbanized and complex society, when you're looking at, let's say, persons who may have perpetrated a crime, they have certain individuals who are trained to recognize a person's face and be able to identify them from a crowd. And oftentimes they're particularly looking for dyslexics because we have those kind of capabilities oftentimes. There's just so much in terms of again, our ability to tell stories in any kind of field, whether you're marketing yourself, branding yourself, looking for a job, the ability to communicate and share something emotional to get somebody to understand what your promise is or why someone should actually be following you. That's again within our gift. And so our intelligences are not just your scholastically based, okay, I could quote, I don't know, when Einstein, I don't know, had that EMC squared, whatever it was, right? Or the Newton's laws or what have you. Well, I could see that on a computer. No, but I could probably tell you the story about, why it is that Einstein's better than Newton, and, say it in such a way that will make you want to read science. So those are some times those kind of intelligences that we have in the community in different levels. And yeah, so the world is ours, really.
Wonderful. And just before we go, and we don't really have much time, do you have any advice for anyone with dyslexia going through challenges during these unprecedented times? So during COVID-19, I mean, you're probably as frantic as I am.
Yeah.
We're all working remotely, and it's like,
Yeah.
gosh, if you're in the office, you could ask someone quickly, how do you spell it? I've forgotten this. You could walk across the desk and ask somebody for help. We're all stuck indoors, same thing. What advice have you got for anyone who's got special educational needs watching this program right now? What two advice would you give?
I really think so too. Know yourself, and that sounds so general, but really know your limitations. if you being on a screen for 2 hours on a day is going to give you headaches, don't be on a screen. If it's a case that you're giving so many different multitasks and you feel that you can't cope, say that, okay, you have to, speak to your manager, whoever you can speak to, whether it's, HR personnel or otherwise, and say, look, I need support in this. Oftentimes you have workplaces, I think whether it's directly through HR or even through maybe a union representative, or externally, there's usually a number or somebody you could call, particularly now, to really talk about any like really specific challenges you have. But fundamentally, it's a case of you putting yourself first and then working towards your own rhythm.
Wonderful. Raheem, it's been such a pleasure having you on A2i Dyslexia Live Show, all things dyslexia.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for the knowledge you've impacted with us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being Raheem. And thank you for the representation of a Black dyslexic man who's doing amazing work within our community. You're such a good role model for our young ones who are growing up. And I just want to just echo that. Parents, please go for the help you need. If you want to contact us, you could just type into Google A2i Dyslexia, and we just come up and you can speak to us about whatever issues you may have. If you want to contact Raheem and find a little bit about what he does, of course, Raheem, I'm going to give you about a quick 1 minute to tell people about your social media handles, and then we'll also share it. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So my tagline, I'm a picture person, right? So my tagline, generally you could get me on Instagram, which is Raheem Khepera. I'm also, like I told you, about the Daily African History as well, so that's also one tagline. If you put in Raheem Khepera on LinkedIn, I'm available as well. Contact me, email me, I'll get back at you. If I can help, I can. If I cannot, I will find somebody who can support.
Wonderful. And of course, we will share Raheem's social media handles when we share this live show on all our different platforms. I want to say thank you very much to our viewers. Thank you very much to Pat T, who was engaging in the conversation, Dr. Brobe, Emmanuel, anybody else that you might have dropped a message that we never got to read. We want to say thank you very much. Keep up the good work, whatever you're doing as a dyslexic. And thank you so much, Raheem. Next week, we're back here with a lovely Rosalind, who is from Ghana, and she's going to be sharing her experience as a young Ghanaian girl growing up in Africa with dyslexia and the massive challenges she faced and what she's become today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye for now. Bye. Bye-bye.